Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, July 3rd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 59 days, the game against Michigan in 150 days. All right, we're going to revisit a show that we did a couple weeks ago, taking one of the preview magazines and projecting what that would mean for the college football playoff this year. Because, frankly, I think there's a lot about this year's college football playoff that is going to be so new and so different that it's worth kind of going through a couple different scenarios to sort of get a look at how things could play out, because I think there's a lot of factors that people are not thinking about right now. The last time we did Phil Steele and ended up with a potential Ohio State versus Michigan Rose Bowl. How fun would that be? This time we're going to take the projections from Lindy's, and Lindy's actually projected all the games, the results of all the college football playoff games. So we're just going to use their numbers, use their projections. We're doing that with our buddy Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, the first time I went through this, I think my big takeaway was, holy crap, Georgia could have the easiest geographic path through a 3 to 4 game playoff that I think is possible, playing 2 games in Atlanta and then 1 down in South Florida. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a spoiler alert on this one. That's going to happen for the Bulldogs again. It sure seems like this year is shaping up for it to be a really long, arduous playoff run for everyone. And then the Bulldogs get to play a couple home games and then one not very far from home.
Yeah, and it will still be a very difficult series of games, but not a series of places to play. As it's kind of like when you're a kid and you had to be home by dark. Georgia's going to be able to be home by dark, like for all of these games. They'll be home way before anybody else. But I think we've come to expect that with Georgia and many of the SEC teams. But it's really very in your face this year for what could happen for Georgia.
Yeah, and one of the things that factors into that is the fact that the national championship game is being played in Atlanta this year. So that will not be an every year thing, but it is a this year thing. So we're again going to be using the numbers from Lindy's. And here's how they have this playing out in terms of just the rankings, how the 12 teams will slot into the bracket. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State. No surprises there. Then remember, the number 3 and number 4 teams are the other 2 highest ranked conference champions. So they've got number 3, Florida State, number 4, Oklahoma State. Not expecting Oklahoma State to be the 4th best team in the country, but they would get the 4th seed if that plays out that way. So those are the 4 teams that would get first round byes. After that, you get number 5, Texas, number 6, Oregon, number 7, Ole Miss, number 8, Michigan, number 9, Alabama, number 10, Notre Dame, number 11, Missouri, and number 12, Liberty. That 12th seed is going to be the 5th conference champion, whoever that is. That could be the highest ranked non-Power 5 team, essentially. So it could be Liberty. I've seen Boise State talked about in some places, UTSA, someone like that. But that team is going to be the 12th seed more than likely this year. So Tony, that would set up our first round games. There's one on Friday, December 20th in the evening, and then 3 games, an early afternoon, a late afternoon, and an evening game on Saturday, December 21st. Number 12, Liberty at number 5, Texas. Number 11, Missouri at number 6, Oregon. Number 10, Notre Dame at number 7, Ole Miss. Number 9, Alabama at number 8, Michigan. This is, last time we ended up with the Phil Steele one, we ended up with a bunch of rematches. This one feels like this is much more likely to be what this kind of looks like this year. Other than the fact that Michigan and Alabama played this past year, and other than the fact that Liberty, we saw what happened to Liberty when they played Oregon last season, so that's probably not going to go great for them. Other than that, this one feels like, okay, Missouri at Oregon, Notre Dame at Ole Miss, like Alabama at Michigan. These are good helmet games. These are good, matchups that we haven't really seen a ton before. Like, this is kind of the intriguing type of first round that I think everyone is sort of hoping for.
Yeah, but my first thought is Liberty better be the Friday night game. That's my first thought on that one. And then you've got this triple header of really cool stuff. And I think the biggest game in Ole Miss, it would be the biggest game at Ole Miss in the modern era, having a playoff game against Notre Dame there, I think would be fantastic. Alabama, we're always talking about with these home playoff games. Well, let's see the SEC come up, to the Midwest, come up to the North and play in December. Well, you've got Alabama at Michigan there and Missouri, Oregon, take the over, I guess, at that point with those 2 offenses. But you look at this and I would say put Alabama at Michigan at night, but does that mean Notre Dame at Ole Miss would be your early game, and then Missouri at Oregon at 3:30 for a kind of 2 noon local kicks?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and they did not project the kickoff times. You would, well, I can't imagine. Okay, first of all, let's run through the TV schedule for this. And remember, the 2 earlier games; those are the ones that are going to be going up against the NFL games. Those are the ones that ESPN has outsourced to TNT. So those are going to be, ESPN is going to almost certainly get its pick of which game it wants. I cannot imagine ESPN not picking Alabama and Michigan as its primetime game. So that would be, assuming that is all how that plays out, and ESPN does get a say, Alabama and Michigan primetime, and then you're going to have Notre Dame, Ole Miss in the early afternoon, then Missouri, Oregon in the late afternoon, I would guess. But yeah, boy, Alabama going to Michigan in December. Who knows what the weather's like? I mean, sometimes we have been in Michigan on days when it has been in the 50s in late November. We have been in Michigan in days when it has been snowing sideways in late November, and this is 3 weeks after that. So that could be really interesting to see an Alabama team have to go play in the elements. One of many things I think I'm looking forward to about this. So, all right, so that's the first round. Now on to the quarterfinals, and the quarterfinals are going to be played in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve. And then on January 1st, 2025, you got the Peach Bowl in the early afternoon, the Rose Bowl in its traditional late afternoon kickoff, and then the Sugar Bowl at night in its traditional spot. The Lindy's magazine has the New Year's Eve Fiesta Bowl projected as number 4 Oklahoma State versus number 5 Texas. Then the Peach Bowl, number 1 Georgia versus number 8 Michigan. Rose Bowl, number 2 Ohio State versus number 7 Ole Miss. And then the Sugar Bowl, number 3 Florida State versus number 6 Oregon. Other than Oklahoma State, Texas, this feels like games that you would, again, the caliber of teams, the caliber of games you're kind of would be expecting for this, this round of the playoffs. And I think the number 4 Oklahoma State is just going to be one of those things that people are still going to be going, wait, what? How are they number 4? We can talk about this as much as we want. I think people are still going to be baffled that a team like Oklahoma State could be the number 4 seed.
Well, and it's similar. It's what we talked about the last time we did a show like this with the Phil Steele magazine. That number 5 seed is maybe the way to go for a number of reasons. You get the 12 team, which is Liberty. You'll get them at home, and then you get the 4 seed, which could be it's going to be the second worst of the conference champions, and that 5 seed is probably it's going to be the second best of a one of the major conferences. So I'm guessing that 5 seed is going to be a favorite over the 4 seed almost every single year, and maybe a considerable favorite. And this is kind of like a Big 12 championship game, old Big 12 championship game played in the Fiesta Bowl. Ole Miss in the Rose Bowl just seems very, very odd to me. That's one where I see it, but until I'm seeing it, it's going to be hard to imagine. Florida State at Oregon in the Sugar Bowl seems legitimate to me. I mean, we're used to seeing Florida State there, and we're used to seeing Oregon kind of everywhere now. But poor Michigan, having to go play, see how they like it, I guess, is what I would say. Go play Georgia in the Peach Bowl. Enjoy your visit to the College Football Hall of Fame, and then just enjoy being surrounded by a bunch of Georgia fans who have this feeling of ownership over something that you took from them last year. So good luck with that one, I guess.
Yeah, where did they play a couple of years ago in the playoff? Was that down in the Orange Bowl, I think, where, that one, that was the one where the Michigan players came in with the run the damn ball T-shirts on, and then they proceeded to not run the damn ball at all or not pass the ball very much either. Things did not go well that game. I would not expect things to go particularly well for Michigan against Georgia this year either. So that moves us on to the semifinals. Thursday, January 9th is the Orange Bowl. Friday, January 10th is the Cotton Bowl. And according to the Lindy's projections, the Orange Bowl would be number 1 Georgia versus number 5 Texas. You'd have an all-SEC semifinal. And then the Cotton Bowl would be number 2 Ohio State versus number 6 Oregon, an all Big Ten semifinal. Tony, this could be the third time Ohio State and Oregon play in the season. If they meet, they will match up in early October in Eugene, and they will potentially match up again in Indianapolis in the Big Ten championship game. I know they say it's hard to beat a team twice in a year, Tony. I don't know that there's a college football saying about how hard it is to beat a team 3 times in a season, but it is entirely possible. We will find out whether it is easy or hard to do that this year.
Well, and if somebody does it, does that mean it's easy? And then we can just coin the phrase right then. Like, everybody knows how easy it is to beat a team 3 times in the same season because we've seen it. It's never, every time the opportunity has presented itself, it's been completed. But yeah, we've talked before about setting the over under on a number of times Ohio State and Oregon will play. And I think we both took the over at 1.5. I think most people probably would. I think it is also interesting that I believe both of these would just be rematches of the conference title games, the SEC and the Big Ten title game. And I still am interested to see what happens when you have a conference title game loser, like a Texas or an Oregon in these situations. Will they get passed by the number 3 team in the conference? Because maybe now Oregon or Georgia or Oregon or Texas has like one more loss than the number 3 team or something of that nature. And you've created some sort of a punishment for making the conference championship. I think there needs to be an understanding that making the conference championship is a good thing and you shouldn't be penalized for it, whether you win or lose, and go from there. But I'll take it. Cotton Bowl against Oregon. At some point, can Oregon come to Ohio Stadium in the playoffs at some point? Maybe.
I mean, Indianapolis is pretty close. That's as close as they will get. And Oregon was, of course, at Ohio State in 2021. That did not go great for Ohio State. Worth mentioning here, Georgia and Texas also have a regular season game scheduled that is kind of mid to late October down in DKR. So they could also play 3 times this year. One thing that we don't know yet is, will the committee shuffle teams around a little bit to try and avoid maybe a third rematch before a national championship game? You could very easily flip Texas and Oregon here, and then you end up with Georgia, Oregon in the Orange Bowl and Ohio State, Texas in the Cotton Bowl. That's the one that came up when we did the Phil Steele one, where the Buckeyes could end up having to play Texas in the semifinal, and then Georgia in Georgia for the final. So, you're not going to make everyone happy there, no matter what you do, and we don't know yet if they're going to be shuffling things to try and avoid rematches as much as possible or just straight seeding. That's all sort of still TBD. One more thing that is TBD, who will play in the national championship game. That is Monday, January 20th, 2025, down in Atlanta. They have number 1 Georgia projected against number 2 Ohio State. They've got Georgia beating Ohio State 27-17. Feel like I'm probably taking the over on 44 points in the national championship game, but that's if you get an Ohio State season that ends with a game against Michigan in Columbus, a Big Ten championship game against, say, Oregon, a quarterfinal game in the Rose Bowl against Ole Miss, a semifinal game in the Cotton Bowl against Oregon, and then a national championship game against Georgia. I mean, just that run, the stuff that happens after Thanksgiving this year, is probably the best series of 5 Ohio State football games you've ever seen, just in terms of quality, excitement, drama, all of that stuff.
I think it would be very interesting if Ohio State goes 3-0 against Oregon and Oregon's only losses are to Ohio State, and have like Ohio State beating Oregon, knocking them out of the top 10 when like only one team could beat them. And it's like you've diminished the win over Oregon, the wins over Oregon, by knocking them out of the top 10 by beating them so many times. But this is going to be the most difficult national championship for anybody, regardless of the venues. It would just be easier for Georgia, but it's still going to be the most difficult run that they've ever had with the number of teams that you're going to have to face. So it goes without saying that we're very much looking forward to it. But again, to reiterate, nobody is owed this. Natty or bust is ridiculous when you consider what somebody's going to have to do to win this. And I'm talking to Ohio State fans who are like, if you don't win it this year, this is the end of the world. They're not even favored to win it. And then you consider what they would have to win it. Somebody's going to win it. So why not Ohio State? That's what, a lot of people are going to be saying. I'm just saying this is much more difficult than anything Jim Tressel ever had to do, anything that Urban Meyer had to do, certainly anything that Woody Hayes ever had to do. He won a national championship before a bowl game, for crying out loud. Didn't have any conference championship games either. So this is the most difficult thing that any college football program is going to have to do. So falling short of that, I don't think it's a scarlet letter, so to speak.
No, this is definitely a year where there are going to be a lot of very, very, very good teams that do not win the national championship this year that have a chance to win the national championship, that have a chance to win the national championship as of mid-December and don't end up getting in there. You may note that we did not say the words Penn State in this show. It could always be worse. You could miss the playoffs entirely. But yeah, I do wonder, I saw a rumor somewhere, or the idea floated somewhere, that Dan Lanning, the Oregon coach, maybe Jerry Jones is interested in him. Wouldn't it be interesting if Dan Lanning's season ended in Jerry World in the Cotton Bowl, and then Jerry said, "Hey, why don't you come up to my suite? We can talk about football." It'd be that could be one more fascinating potential subplot for this, what is shaping up to be a really, really interesting season. Fear not, I have the Pick Six preview already pre-ordered. As soon as that comes in, assuming it's a little bit of a different look than what we've done in the previous two shows, we will probably take another run through this as well, because this is so fascinating to me. All the different possible matchups and the teams playing in places they've never played. Ohio State and Ole Miss having their first ever matchup in the Rose Bowl. That would be imagine telling yourself that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Ohio State and Ole Miss will play for the first time ever, and it'll be in the Rose Bowl. With
Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, and Lane Kiffin will be prominently involved. Yeah, speaking of coaches who might be headed out the door at the end of the season for somewhere else, well, we'll see. Maybe Ohio State just casts a bunch of coaches off into new jobs during the college football playoff run this year. We will see how that all goes. We will be there for all of it. We're looking forward to all of it as well at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We're at our whole team of X's and O's gurus, making you a smarter football fan, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.